Okay, this is the pre-roll for the Sabbath service for the 5th day of the 10th month on God's holy sacred calendar. It's the 23rd day of December 2017 on the pagan Roman calendar. Hey, we're going to do that again in a moment when I go live. This is just the pre-roll. We're going to be going live in just a moment on Sabbath.tv and Facebook Live. Let's go ahead, because it's time to be on. All right, greetings to those of you watching on Sabbath.television, Sabbath.tv. We're going to be going on Facebook, streaming on Facebook Live too, so let me bring them in and I'll give the date and all that good stuff. All right, greetings to those of you watching on Facebook Live for our Sabbath service for this Sabbath, the 5th day of the 10th month on God's holy sacred calendar, as you can see down there on my lower third. And it is the 23rd day of December 2017 today, this Sabbath morning in the United States, afternoon. Greetings to those of you in the UK for the afternoon service there. It's still before sunset. I want to apologize for being late this morning. Several factors. We had a big storm this morning at our usual sign-on time, and I'm, as many of you know, I've been off of World Watch for 3 weeks now. Since the beginning of the month of December, we've been off World Watch, running 3 weeks now, and I hope to be back on tomorrow night. I know I said last Sabbath that I hope to be back on Sunday night a week ago, but we had such problems with the software. And in fact, today, as we couldn't use a camera or a virtual studio last week, and we've done some cleaning up to the studio. We've painted a lot of the virtual studio area. The screens, we've reshaped them, cleaned them up. A lot of things while we were off we were able to do that I wouldn't have been able to have gotten to while we were on live. But even today, with things where they are, we're using a lot of patches. And any of you engineers in television work, you probably remember how you used to sometimes, when a piece of equipment went down, you'd have to patch around it and through other old stuff. Well, I'm patching through trial software until I'm able to actually secure the updates by paying their fees, and I'm saving the money little by little, and I'm also asking them to please extend the trial on the full working versions that we really do need. And in fact, I'm using some trial software as part of our patch here this morning, which I only have so much time left on it, so I can only do this a certain way for a few more weeks. And then I'm back to the same problem unless we're able to update that software. But listen, I'm praying for that and looking for God to provide it when he says, all right, Stephen, now's the time. And sometimes by God doing that and making you pull back, you actually wind up cocking the gun. And then, boom, you shoot off a little better and further than where you were before you got pulled back. And we did some things, like I said, cleaning up the studio that we needed to do. My lighting's not quite right, but at least I'm able to be with you and kind of look at you. I can't zoom the camera shot in. The camera's stuck on an open shot with the software arrangement we have at the moment. I hope to have that patched and fixed by tomorrow night when we want to go back on World Watch, so I can do a close-up on this screen with you and point to it. Now, I can pull this screen in full screen. And in fact, I'm going to do that, as today we will be going through chapter 6 of the U.S. and the U.K. in prophecy. We're going to pick right back up there where we left off, I think a week ago, last Friday night Bible study, or last Sabbath, whenever we were doing chapter 5. We're going to pick up this week with chapter 6, and I'll record it, and I'll have the recording available that I can snip and put together in the entire, once we finish the entire book that Mr. Armstrong encourages to read. And brethren, even with, some of you may be saying, well, Stephen, this is Christmas time and we need to do meat in due season. Well, listen, a week ago, I think it was I think it was the Friday night Bible study, and then I read chapter 5 for Sabbath day last week. But a week ago Friday night for Bible study, I played one of Mr. Armstrong's outstanding telecast about the plain truth about Christmas. So we covered that in this season. And when the Bible, like Tom Williams well said in the Internet Spokesman's Club topic session this week, he said, meat in due season refers to the seasons on God's holy day calendar. The feasts that are mentioned in Leviticus 23. That's the calendar of the future. That's the calendar of God's doing. And when we talk about the seasons, meat in due season, we're talking about the seasons of the feast days and the holy days on God's calendar, not man's calendar. However, because of the impact on the world, there is some reason to deal a little bit with that. And on that note, I'll mention something relative to this world's season in just a moment that happened in a thrift store. You might find this even humorous a little bit and relative and truthful, too. While I was in a thrift store, I think it was just yesterday, looking for, and I found, I buy a lot of my white shirts there. I can really ruin white shirts under these hot lights fast. And my sister's in town, and I'm getting together for lunch with her tomorrow. She's going up on Christmas Day to spend time with the family. My sister's not among the spring harvest, for those of you that understand what I'm saying. And she is like a lot of your family, on tap by God for the fall harvest. And of course God could change that at any moment and decide, hey, I'm going to go ahead and pull somebody I had in mind for the fall harvest into the spring harvest, because some of you people I tried to pull in for the spring harvest aren't pulling the mustard. And there's scriptures that relate to that, how you can be replaced by Gentiles because you had to be grafted out, of the tree, of your natural tree, but olive tree. But I was looking for so I'd have a nice clean shirt. At the thrift store, they have them all nicely laundered and cleaned, and so I bought me a new one. And while I was there, an old fella came in the door that had a big white fluffy beard, and apparently somebody man had came in about the same time with him. They split up. They could have been friends shopping, and they looking for different things, but they did come in the door about the same time, and the one man had said to the other something about him appearing like Santa Claus. I didn't actually hear those words, but the context of what the man said in reply was, I don't want to have anything to do with Santa Claus, because the Bible says, he said, well, first of all, before he mentioned what the Bible says, he says, Santa Claus is a big lie. And he raved a moment about how people promote lies with promoting Christmas and Santa Claus. And then he said, quoting the Bible, it would be from Revelation 21, verse 8, I think it is, because he said, all liars shall have their part in the lake of fire. Now, if they were friends, he wasn't just having a private, quiet conversation with his friend. He said it in a loud, vociferous way, like he wanted everybody in the store to hear that. Like he had a message from God. And as I heard him say that, I said, well, yeah, he's true. And I was kind of like, I almost wanted to applaud for the guy. I thought, hey, there's somebody from the world speaking out about this evil thing. And a lot of us understand, unless God calls a person, they're not going to understand. There are people who even espouse the fact that they are atheist, and yet they're very prolific about keeping Christmas. I had an atheist person chew me out the other day for not keeping Christmas. And I said, well, now wait a minute. you don't even believe in God. And I said, Christmas it's a religious thing. They try to espouse, they try to put across the lie, another lie besides Santa Claus. They put across the lie that Jesus Christ was born on December 25th, which the Bible clearly indicates he was not, because it talks about the time of his birth being when the shepherds were in the field tending flocks in the Middle East, in the areas where in the middle, in dead winter, like December 25 would be, at the start of dead winter, toward the start of dead winter, there are no shepherds in the field. They don't get out there in that cold, wintry weather. They put the herd up for the winter. So that's the least possible time when Christ could have been born. But the world espouses this lie that Christmas is the birth of Christ. And so I had this atheist person who doesn't believe in God chewing me out for not wanting to get together with family to keep Christmas. So and now most of my family, thankfully, they understand it. They don't see me as a hostile person. Of course, in their own mind, they may think, oh, that poor deceived person, they may think, because of their preachers and their religion. But my family knows I don't observe Christmas, and I do get together with them when I can, when the family gets together for days like Thanksgiving. I make a point of trying to be there for times like that, so that I, like God's end-time apostle Herbert Armstrong instructed us, brethren, to be doing, and that is, he encouraged us, very shortly before he died, he encouraged us to take every opportunity we can and have to show love to our family, and do that. So that was good words, especially since a lot of us, as we first were called into the body of Christ, we would see the instruction where we have to be willing to give up our families, and in some cases we do. In my case, at the early time when I first was being called by God and was baptized into the body of Jesus Christ, having had hands laid on me and receiving God's Spirit, at that time my dad disowned me. And because of some of our understandings of the truth and beliefs on the truth, my dad just said, no CO will ever put his foot under my roof, and he just said other words that indicated he had disowned his firstborn son. Now later he changed. I now own that roof that he said I would never set foot under again, but I now own it. Dad himself gave it to me. He did out a deed before he died to transfer this property, from which I have this virtual studio from which we do the World Watch program nightly. When we get back on, brethren, I've made a commitment to keep that program going. Now, there are times when God himself may say, hey, you need a break. And I'm very thankful I did. I was getting burned out very badly in a certain way. And I've been able to see that, hey, by getting this break, I've been able to be both physically and spiritually and mentally and emotionally restored, revived, and dynamically some life back in me, because, I was physically, emotionally, spiritually, a lot of ways, just being burned out. You can get that way. You can get there. But I was praying about that, and God himself, I think, caused a lot of the way things are working and happening to give me a chance to be revived, and to give me opportunity to spend time cleaning up things that needed cleaning up here. So, I'm sorry I haven't been there for you, but we'll be back, and especially as we come back, things are set to rip, roar, and rip and roar. And one reason we're paying attention to what God's end-time apostle told us to be sure and read this book. He told us many times in sermons And he wasn't just talking to the telecast audience of the world. Before the live audience, where he would say, be sure and read this book. You know, the United States and the British Commonwealth, or the United Kingdom now, in prophecy. We're going to be getting to chapter 6 in just a few moments. But I told you what that guy in the thrift store said loudly to everyone in the store about how Christmas is a big lie, Santa Claus is a lie, and, you know, that does damage to kids. You know, when a kid starts to find out and understand that Santa Claus, there's a different one in every store, and so the one you're seeing, that's not the real Santa, and he's wearing a glued-on or you know, some fashion. He's got the beard with an elastic thing holding it from behind him. And so a lot of kids, as they get older, a maliciousness and you know, Santa is an authority figure. He's presented as a figure of authority. And where kids normally are taught, or should be taught anyway, that they should have respect for their elders and for authority. They see this man they understand as a phony now. They see him as what he is. He's a phony, and they say, well, that's a lie. And so a natural disrespect for authority begins to develop in a kid, such that some of them become malicious and they want to pull that beard or pull it off. I was tempted one time to do what they did to that sports announcer, one of the sports players did, and pulled off his toupee in the middle of a live broadcast, nationwide broadcast. And I was tempted when I had to take something up on stage to a speaker up on stage who, you know, I knew was wearing a hairpiece. I was tempted, like when I had to go take it and put it on the desk in front of him, I was tempted to do what I'd seen done to that sports guy on TV, which, you know, they did it in fun, but it was embarrassing for the announcer. But I was tempted to grab the guy's hairpiece and just pull it off from him and just hold it there for a moment. But no, I can't do that. And even though the guy's preaching we should no longer be keeping the Sabbath, you know, and you kind of lose respect for that you had for ministers that used to preach the truth to you, and then they change. You know, some of you may say, Steve, you should have gone ahead and yanked the toupee off the guy. I was tempted to, but as I stood there and prayed about it and said, God, should I do this? It was kind of like, no, you need to, for the moment anyway, you need to let this be. Or that might have been my own thought, but, you know, in one way I would have liked to yanked it. Of course, I'd have probably been then yanked, you know, and I'd have been out sooner than I was put out by one of the local ministers brought in to convert the Sabbath-keeping people in the congregation over to their new way of thinking of let's worship Baal and, you know, become apostates and observe the 8th day of the week, as Jeroboam led the people of Israel to do back in that ancient time, right after King Solomon died and his son Rehoboam took the throne, and Jeroboam came up to him and said, you know, we want you to lower our taxes. And he wouldn't do it, and so the people, the 10 tribes under Jeroboam, rebelled. And Jeroboam, fearing that the people would go back to Rehoboam in Jerusalem, he, come feast time, instituted the 8th month of the year, Halloween-type observance, to replace the Feast of Tabernacles, and he also the weekly thing. He pushed them over to the 8th day of the week, to Sunday, or, you know, 8th day, the first day of the week, to Sunday, worshiping the sun god, Baal. Anyway, look, let's get to this morning. I did want to talk to you a little bit. Since we have a camera, I'm not usually able to do that. And rather than just, you know, harshly launch into this, I know just like we have a sermonette in services often, it's good to let people wake up and be warmed up. Now, we're later today, so many of you probably are well awake. I usually would have been on an hour and a half earlier, which is very early for some, especially on the West Coast, and so we repeat this later, and we have it in the archive where you can watch it from on demand from a recording. But as long as my voice is holding out here this morning, we're about to go to where I'll do this reading of chapter 6, the entire chapter 6. So excuse me while I grab just a quick sip of water before we pull that full screen, and I change the microphone that we're using so it will sound consistent for when we put all the chapters together into one recording. For those that want to sit down and watch it all in one whole thing, of course, that's going to be, some of these chapters take almost an hour to get through. So all 12 chapters, that's going to be quite a long, could be 10 hours, could be 10, 12 hours long. But let's get to it, brethren, and thanks for joining me this Sabbath. Again, it's the 5th day of the 10th month on God's Holy Sacred Calendar, meaning we've got almost the entire month of this 10th month, all of the 11th month, and all of the 12th month. So there's almost 3 months, and then 2 weeks into the first month, on the 14th day of the first month, after sunset that day, we will have the Passover. We'll have the next feast day, which will be the Passover memorial, the foot washing ceremony memorial. And so that's a good 3 months and a week away. Just to give you a time reference from where we are. And of course you're going to get right now at this present moment on this being the 23rd day of December 2017, just 2 days before the world's celebration of Christ Mass or Christmas, you're going to be getting more Merry Christmases than ever, as you might have to go out into a store and go shopping and what have you. I've learned a long time ago a good response to that is just to say thank you. They mean well. They don't really want a sermon. It's proved it's not going to do most people any good, although if you wanted to do like that man that came in the store who I wanted to applaud, Christmas is a big lie. As long as you're willing to take the isolationism or ostracization that people will give you for speaking out, maybe you can go ahead. But I found it's a good idea for the most part, so that you can have decent relationship in your community, to just say thank you, Just say thank you. And you don't need to say a whole lot of anything else. You just can say thank you. They're really just wishing you well. You don't have to and should not say back to them, well, Merry Christmas to you too. Instead you just simply say thank you, knowing that they're meaning well and they don't necessarily deserve, want, or whatever a sermon from you. Okay, brethren, I think I'm ready. If you are, let's go ahead and pull this screen full forward. Let's see, it's going to be, where is that? I had it up here a moment ago. It's going to be on this screen right here. We'll get that out of the way. And let me switch to the microphone that we use for the recording for this. I'll go ahead and get it up and make sure the volume is working. Yeah, it looks like it's working. The United States and United Kingdom in Prophecy, a book originally entitled The United States and British Commonwealth in Prophecy by Herbert W. Armstrong. We're going to be covering this morning chapter 6, entitled The Children of Israel Become Two Nations. And this is being read aloud by yours truly, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreath. First chapter overview. Here are the sub-chapters you'll be hearing within this chapter. Israel separated from David's throne. David dynasty rules over Judah. Israel divided into two nations. Israel at war with the Jews. House of Israel not Jews. Israel rejects God's rule. Israel driven out and lost. Gentiles replace the house of Israel. Israel not Judah lost. Israel never returned. Those are the sub-chapter titles, and here's the first section. The house of Israel is not Jewish. Those who constitute it are not Jews. Those who constitute the house of Israel are not Jews and never were. That fact we shall now see conclusively beyond refute. After David's death, his son Solomon succeeded him to the throne over Israel. Solomon taxed the people excessively and reigned in a gorgeous splendor, probably never equaled before or since. He married Gentile wives. From outside nations. Because of them, he burned incense and sacrificed to Moloch and other idols. As a result of this, the Eternal said unto Solomon, For as much as this is done of you, and you have not kept my covenant and my statutes, which I commanded you, I will surely rend the kingdom from you, and will give it to your servant. Notwithstanding, in your days I will not do it for David your father's sake, but I will rend it out of your hand, the hand of your son. Howbeit, I will not rend away all the kingdom, but will give one tribe to your son for David my servant's sake, and for Jerusalem's sake, which I have chosen. 1 Kings 11, verses 11 through 13. Israel separated from David's throne. Note it. It is the kingdom, not part of it, which is to be rent away. It is the part, one tribe, which is to remain. And note, for right here it is expressed the great why of this whole question. Though Solomon himself deserved to have it run away, God will leave one tribe, not because of leniency toward Solomon, but for David's sake. God has made a perpetual covenant with David, unconditionally, which he cannot and will not break. David's dynasty cannot be broken. That is the reason the scepter promise is not destroyed, but the ruler is to be permitted to rule on without a single generation's gap over at least a part of the children of Israel. In 1 Kings 11, verse 26, you read of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, an Ephrathite, or Ephraimite, Solomon's servant. He was made ruler over the house of Joseph, or Ephraim and Manasseh. Speaking to Jeroboam through Ahijah the prophet, the Eternal says, Behold, I will rend the kingdom out of the hand of Solomon, and will give 10 tribes to you. Howbeit, I will not take the whole kingdom out of his hand, for David my servant's sake, whom I chose, because he kept my commandments and my statutes. But I will take the kingdom out of his son's hand, and will give it unto you, even 10 tribes. And unto his son will I give 1 tribe, that David my servant, remember why, may have a light always before me in Jerusalem, the city which I've chosen me to put my name there. And I will take you, and you shall reign according to all that my soul desires. And you shall reign according to all that your soul desireth, and shalt be king over Israel. 1 Kings 11, verses 31 through 37. These words make plain 2 facts. The nation Israel is to be taken away from Solomon's son and given to Jeroboam. It's not just a tribe or a few tribes, but the nation called by the title Israel, which this Jeroboam of the tribe of Ephraim is to rule. The 10-tribed kingdom was the one to which the national title Israel was given. For truly the name Israel was named on the sons of Joseph. Genesis 48, verse 16. Wherever they are, the Bible calls them by the national name Israel. To the world, their identity today is lost. But in biblical prophecy, it is they, not the Jews, who are called Israel. And they were in and headed the 10-tribe nation Israel. On the other hand, because of his promise to David, the Eternal left one tribe, Judah, in Jerusalem under the sons of Solomon, so that a son of David might continue to sit on the throne of David over children of Israel. God had promised David unconditionally that the time would never come when he would not have a son or descendant sitting on the throne ruling over children of Israel. Now, in later actual history, we see that promise being carried out, that covenant made binding. The children of Judah, though they do not constitute all the children of Israel, and though they are not called by that national title, nevertheless are children of Israel, and thus God can keep his promise to David, can avoid abolishing the scepter promises made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And at the same time, God can visit punishment upon Solomon by taking away the nation Israel and leaving a son of the scepter promise sitting on the throne over only one tribe. Note the very important point that though a punishment must be inflicted, God does not break any of his promises. David's dynasty rules over Judah. God had promised that the scepter shall not depart from Judah. He did not break that promise. Now note carefully that the 10 tribes rent away are called by the title Israel, and that one tribe remaining under Rehoboam, Solomon's son, is merely called Judah or the house of Judah. They go by their tribal name, while the 10-tribed kingdom continues to carry the national name Israel. Actually, Israel rejected its king and set a new king, Jeroboam, on Israel's throne. The tribe of Judah seceded from the nation Israel in order to retain Rehoboam as their king. But now, Rehoboam, David's grandson, became king of a new nation. That new nation was not the kingdom of Israel. It was the kingdom of Judah. Now, see how it happened. When Solomon's son Rehoboam succeeded to the throne, the people at once demanded that the heavy taxes imposed by Solomon be reduced. They sent their leader Jeroboam as spokesman to Rehoboam. Pleaded Jeroboam, "Your father made our yoke grievous. Now, therefore, make you the grievous servants of your father, and the heavy yoke which he put upon us lighter, and we'll serve you." 1 Kings 12, verse 4. The reply was, "My father hath chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scorpions." Verse 11. Israel rebelled. The command to the people was, "To your tents, O Israel." The challenge to the royal family was, "Now see to your own house," verse 16. So Israel rebelled against the house of David, and to this day, the day this was written. And it came to pass, when all Israel heard that Jeroboam was come again, that they sent and called him unto the congregation, and made him king over all Israel. All Israel. There was none that followed the house of David, but the tribe of Judah only. 1 Kings 12, verses 19 and 20. Then Rehoboam assembled all the house of Judah with the tribe of Benjamin, verse 21. Rehoboam commenced to fight, to subdue and bring back the house of Israel. But God said, "You shall not fight against your brethren, the children of Israel, for this thing is from me." Verse 24. Israel divided into two nations. Did you notice that it is now the 10-tribed kingdom headed by the Ephraim-Manasseh tribes, with an Ephraimite as their king, the inheritor of the birthright promises, which is called the house of Israel? Did you notice that it's now the 10-tribed kingdom headed by the Ephraim-Manasseh tribes with an Ephraimite as their king? The 10-tribed kingdom, the inheritor of the birthright promises, which is called the house of Israel. The tribe of Judah left to Rehoboam along with the Benjamites, and later, after Jeroboam kicked them out of office in Israel, after he kicked out the Benjamites, the priestly tribe of Levi is called in Scripture not Israel, but the house of Judah. They are all actually children of Israel, but are no longer called by that national title. This is emphasized so much because the common conception is exactly the opposite. The average conception today seems to be that the tribe of Judah, which remained, carried the title Israel. Most people seem to think of the 10 tribes as merely certain tribes driven out from the nation Israel. But it is Israel which now sets up its kingdom under the Ephraimite Jeroboam in the land of Samaria, north of Jerusalem. It's not Israel, but Judah, a mere 3 tribes broken off from Israel, which is left behind in Jerusalem. The 10 tribes were not broken off from Israel. Israel did not remain in Jerusalem. Instead, Judah was broken off from Israel. Israel at war with the Jews. Notice it carefully. The house of Judah, now including the tribe of Benjamin under King Rehoboam of David's dynasty, was about to fight against the nation Israel with its 10 tribes headed by Ephraim and Manasseh. Now, let's have scriptural proof that the 10-tribe people called Israel, often prophetically spoken of as Ephraim, are not Jews and never were Jews. Remember, the term Jew is merely a nickname for Judah. Hence, it applies to the one nation or house of Judah only, never to the house of Israel. From any exhaustive concordance, you can learn that the first time in all the Bible that the word Jew occurs is in 2 Kings 16, verse 6. Nowhere in all the Bible before this does the name Jew appear. Notice it. First time in all the Bible that the word Jew occurs is in 2 Kings 16:6. Ahaz began to reign as king of Judah, verse 1. He sat on David's throne, verse 2. At this time a man named Pekah was king of Israel. King Pekah of Israel formed an alliance with Rezin, king of Syria, against Judah, and together the armies of Israel and Syria, allied, came up against Jerusalem. They besieged King Ahaz of Judah, but could not overcome him. Verse 5. At that time, says verse 6, Rezin, king of Syria, the ally of Israel, fighting with Israel against Judah, recovered Elath to Syria and drove the Jews from Elath. Verse 6. The first place in the Bible where the word Jew is used, we find Israel at war against the Jews. Israel at war against the Jews. Who drove the Jews out of Elath? The ally of King Pekah of Israel. The ally of Israel, King Pekah, drove out the Jews from Elath. The army fighting with Israel against Judah. And the children of Judah who resided in the town of Elath are called Jews in a manner which distinguished them from the house of Israel, with whom these Jews were at war. Observe the significance of that. The first place in Scripture where the name Jew appears, the Jews were at war against Israel. They are of a different nation altogether. They are individually children of Israel, but they do not have that national title, House of Israel. It's wrong to call the Jews of today Israel. They are not the nation Israel. They are Judah. And wherever Israel is today, remember that Israel as a national name does not mean Jew. Whoever the lost 10 tribes of Israel are today, they are not the Jews. Wherever you see the name Israel or House of Israel or Samaria or Ephraim used in prophecy, remember this. It never refers to the Jews, but to Israel, which was at war against the Jews. House of Israel, not Jews. No place in all the Bible does the term Israel refer to the Jews exclusively. When the sense is not national but individual, the term Israel alone, or children of Israel, or men of Israel, may and sometimes does refer to or include the Jews. Such an expression, for instance, as you men of Israel, which frequently occurs in the New Testament, refers to Israelites as individuals in a collective sense, not a national sense. It usually refers to Jews as individual descendants of the patriarch Israel, Jacob. Moses may not scripturally be called a Jew. He was a Levite. Abraham was not a Jew. Neither was Isaac, nor Jacob, nor Adam or Noah, for that matter. The descendants of the patriarch Judah are racially Jews, and also all who join themselves nationally to the tribe of Judah, those of the tribes of Benjamin and Levi. Jews are Israelites, just as Californians are Americans. But most Israelites are not Jews, just as most Americans are not Californians. The Jews are the house of Judah only, a part of the Israelites. But when these people are spoken of as nations rather than as collective individuals, the term Israel never refers to the Jews. House of Israel never means Jews. The 3 tribes at Jerusalem under the Davidic king are called merely the house of Judah. But of Ephraim and Manasseh, sons of Joseph, the dying Israel had said, "Let my name be named on them." Genesis 48, verse 16. And truly, they now bear the name of Israel, the two sons of Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh. From here on, the tribe of Judah with Benjamin and the tribe of Levi is called Judah, not Israel. The 10 tribes headed by Ephraim and Manasseh from this time on are called Israel. They are not Jews and never were called Jews. From this time on, the children of Israel, 12 tribes in all, are divided into 2 nations. And now, for the first time, the birthright goes into one nation, Israel, headed by Ephraim Manasseh, while the scepter remains in another nation called the house of Judah. The scepter remains in another nation called the house of Judah. The 2 phases of the promise to Abraham now are divided between 2 entirely separate nations. For many generations, Israel and Judah remained as separate nations in adjoining territories, having their own separate kings. Why should ministers and professed Bible students be in ignorance of this when 4 whole books of the Bible, 1st and 2nd Kings and 1st and 2nd Chronicles, are devoted to explaining it and recording the history of these separate rival kingdoms? Look at the maps in the back of your Bible. There you will see the territory of each nation plainly shown. Judah retained the city of Jerusalem, its capital, and the territory known as Judea. That's Judea. Israel occupied the territory north of Judea. Samaria became its central city, or Samaria became its capital city, and the house of Israel often is called Samaria in prophecy. This, too, is a vital key to understanding prophecy. Samaria never refers to the Jews in prophecy, but always the 10 tribes, the house of Israel. We want to impress here that Israel and Judah are not 2 names for the same nation. They were and still are and shall be till the second coming of Christ 2 separate nations. The house of Judah always means Jew. This distinction is vital if we are to understand prophecy, because most so-called Bible students are in ignorance of this basic distinction. They are unable to rightly understand prophecy. The next place where the term Jew is mentioned in the Bible, the house of Israel, had been driven out into captivity, lost from view, and the term applies only to those of the house of Judah. Israel rejects God's rule. Immediately on becoming king over the house of Israel, Jeroboam, the tribe of Ephraim, set up 2 golden calves, introducing idol worship in the kingdom. 1 Kings 12, verses 28 through 33. Jeroboam was afraid lest his subjects, in going once a year to Jerusalem to keep the Feast of Tabernacles, should return to Rehoboam and he should lose his new throne. The introduction of idolatry was to prevent this and to keep the people home. This idolatry with Sabbath breaking, Ezekiel 20, verses 10 through 24, was the great national sin which became a curse to Israel. Generation after generation, God pleaded with the house of Israel to turn from tradition, from their fathers' wrong ways, and to return to keeping God's commandments. But through 9 different dynasties under 19 kings, Israel continued those national sins. Israel continued these national sins, sins so great in God's sight that finally God caused them to become a conquered, captive nation. Now let us note a passage which has been consistently misinterpreted. In 1 Kings 14, verses 15-16, we find, "The Eternal shall smite Israel," not Judah. "The Eternal shall smite Israel as a reed is shaken in the water, and he shall root up Israel out of this good land which he gave to their fathers, and shall scatter them," not Judah. He shall scatter Israel beyond the river, because they have made their groves, provoking the Eternal to anger. "And he shall give Israel," not Judah, he shall give Israel up because of the sins of Jeroboam, who did sin and who made Israel to sin. This is dealing specifically with the result of Jeroboam's idol worship in Israel, in the northern 10-tribed kingdom, which possessed the birthright promises. It's these people who were to be rooted up and scattered beyond the river, not the Jews. Yet this passage is quoted by nearly all students of prophecy as pertaining to the scattered condition of the Jews today, the very people to whom it does not apply. This is one example of the fact that what we are here covering is a veritable key to an understanding of many long-hidden prophecies. Unless this is kept firmly in mind, prophecy can never be correctly understood. The people which this passage says shall be rooted up and scattered beyond the river never were called Jews. They were the people headed by Ephraim and Manasseh, possessors of the unconditional promises of becoming a great nation and a company of nations, becoming so numerous they would number into the hundreds of millions, possessing the gates of enemy nations, becoming a colonizing people, spreading out till their colonies spread around the world, the globe. Spreading out till their colonies spread around the globe. Yet many who come to see this distinction between Israel and Judah, between Jews and the other tribes, after having seen it as a great new light, will by force of years of habit fall right back into the old rut and apply text referring to Israel to the Jews. The terms house of Israel or all Israel, when the meaning is national, or the terms Jacob or Rachel or Ephraim or house of Joseph or Samaria, often used in the Bible in prophecy, relate to the 10-tribed birthright people, not to the Jews. This is a key and a master key to Bible understanding. Israel driven out and lost. In the years 721 to 718 BC, the house of Israel was conquered, and its people were soon driven out of their own land, out of their homes and cities, and carried captives to Assyria on the southern shores of the Caspian Sea, and then lost from view. Therefore the Eternal was very angry with Israel and removed them out of his sight. There was none left but the tribe of Judah only. 2 Kings 17, verse 18. The Eternal removed who? Israel. It is Israel which was removed and driven from the Eternal's sight until they became lost from view. Who was left? Judah only. Only the Jews. Israel was now gone. They became known as the lost 10 tribes and are so designated today. Gentiles replace house of Israel. Now notice 2 Kings 17, verses 22 and 23. For the children of Israel walked in all the sins of Jeroboam, which he did. They departed not from them until the Lord removed Israel out of his sight, as he had said by all his servants the prophets. So was Israel, not Judah, not the Jews. Israel was carried away out of their own land to Assyria unto this day, written about 620 B.C. Observe that the people who had the national title Israel and the birthright promises, who were not the Jews, were carried away out of their own land, Samaria. They left that land never to return. Now note the following verse of this same passage. And the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon, and from Cutha, and from Ava, and from Hamath, and from Sepharvaim, and placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel. And they possessed Samaria and dwelt in the cities thereof. 2 Kings 17, verse 24. It is these foreigners who were living in the land of Samaria in the time of Christ, and who were called Samaritans in the gospel records. It is well to keep that in mind, for the Samaritans of the New Testament were not in any sense a racial mixture with the Israelites. Only one individual, a priest, returned from among the captive Israelites to teach the newly planted Gentiles the corrupted religion of Israel. 2 Kings 17, verses 27 and 28. These people from the land of Babylon, however, did not allow God nor God's ways. They did not follow. These people from the land of Babylon, however, did not follow God nor God's ways nor his religion. The very next verse shows this. But every nation still made gods of their own. 2 Kings 17, verse 29. The general state religion of the Assyrians and Babylonians was the Chaldean mystery religion. That was the religion of Simon the sorcerer, Acts 8, who believed Philip's miracles, appropriated the name Christian, and started a new counterfeit Christianity after the Apostle Peter rejected him as being bound in iniquity, that is, lawlessness. He took the name of Christ, rejected God's law, and added licentious false grace to the Babylonian mystery religion, calling it Christianity. This false Christianity has deceived millions down to the present evil generation. A more detailed account of the captivity of Israel is found in 2 Kings chapter 18, verses 9 through 12, and chapter 17, verses 5 through 18. The house of Israel began to abide many days without a king. Hosea 3, verse 4. Since they were the people who carried the title Israel, it is they, not Judah, who must become lost in identity. Israel, not Judah, lost. The Scriptures plainly tell us that Israel was to lose its identity, its language, its religion, its land, and its name. In Deuteronomy 32, verse 26, God had warned them through Moses, I said I would scatter them into corners. I would make the remembrance of them to cease from among men.
That warning cannot be applied to the Jews. The remembrance of the Jews has not ceased. The remembrance of them could not cease unless their identity and name were lost. This applies to the lost tribes, not to the Jews. Now notice Isaiah 8, verse 17. And I will wait upon the Eternal that hides his face from the house of Jacob. Jacob's name was changed to Israel. In other words, this applies to the house of Israel, the 10-tribed kingdom who were cut off from the presence of God. They consequently lost the knowledge of the true God and the true religion. The Eternal would cease speaking to them in their own Hebrew tongue, but with another tongue will he speak to this people. Isaiah 28, verse 11. This cannot apply to the Jews, who still read their Bibles in the Hebrew tongue. Isaiah 62, verse 2, and the Gentiles shall see your righteousness, and all kings your glory, after Christ returns. And you shall be called by a new name, which the mouth of the Lord shall name. While this prophecy refers directly to the future, after Christ's return, it has also been fulfilled, typically foreshadowing that time by the fact that Israel is known by a different name today. That cannot apply to the Jews. They were known then and today as Jews. Israel never returned. The house of Israel did not return to Palestine with the Jews in the days of Ezra and Nehemiah, as some erroneously believe. Those who returned to rebuild the temple and restore worship to Jerusalem at that time, 70 years after Judah's captivity, were only those of the house of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar had carried to Babylon. Note well these facts. Number one, in 721 to 1718 BC, Israel began to be carried away out of their own land to Assyria. 2 Kings 17, verse 23. They were soon all removed completely. There was none left but the tribe of Judah only. 2 Kings 17, verse 18. Judah only remained. Number two, more than 130 years later, Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon carried the Jews, Judah, who only remained in Palestine, away to Babylon. So none of the house of Israel dwelt in Palestine at the time of this captivity of Judah. Number three, those who returned to Palestine to rebuild the temple and restore worship 70 years after Judah's captivity were all of the house of Judah, all Jews, all of those whom Nebuchadnezzar had carried away. They returned again unto Jerusalem and Judah, every one unto his city. Ezra 2, verse 1. Only those of the tribe of Judah, together with remnants of Benjamin and Levi, who constituted the house of Judah, returned at that time. Then rose up the chief of the fathers of Judah and Benjamin, and the priest and the Levites. Ezra 1, verse 5. There are, of course, those who reject this truth God has seen fit now, in our time, to reveal, and who falsely represent that all Israelites, including the 10-tribe house of Israel, returned to Jerusalem at the time of Ezra and Nehemiah. They will sift out instances where the word Israel is used in connection with individuals or people of the house of Judah and misrepresent that they are the house of Israel. Let it be repeated for emphasis. Jews are Israelites. Jews are Israelites, but only part of the Israelites are Jews. The term Jew is a nickname for the national name Judah. Jews are truly men of Israel or people of Israel, but they are not of the nation called the house of Israel or kingdom of Israel. Those who refuse this truth to such a passage as this, "And the residue of Israel, of the priests and the Levites, were in all the cities of Judah, every one in his inheritance." Nehemiah 11, verse 20. Because the word Israel is used, they will claim that all 12 tribes. Because the word Israel is used, they will claim these are all 12 tribes. But it is specifically speaking of priests and Levites, and they are of the house of Judah, but not of the 10-tribe house of Israel. They were truly the residue of Israel, the residue of the 12 tribes. They were Israelites, but they were not of the nation called the house of Israel. They returned to their inheritance in the land of Judah. Nehemiah says plainly, these are the children of the province that went up out of the captivity of Babylon, captivity of Judah, not the house of Israel, of those that had been carried away, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away. Nehemiah 7, verse 6. And none of the 10 tribes had been left in Palestine after the Assyrian captivity, more than 100 years before. 2 Kings 17, verse 18. Ezra says, "And the children of Israel, the priests and the Levites, and the rest of the children of the captivity, kept the dedication." Ezra 6, verse 16. These were people of the kingdom of Judah, not the kingdom of Israel, but they were children of Israel. Names and genealogies are given in Ezra and Nehemiah of those who went back to Palestine from Babylon, and there was none from any of the 10 tribes. Consequently, those in Jerusalem at the time of Christ were of these 3 tribes, not of the house of Israel. And most, if not all, of those converted were of the tribe of Benjamin, as Paul said he was. The house of Israel became known as the lost 10 tribes, now known by another name, speaking a different language. The house of Israel became known as the lost 10 tribes, now known as another name, now known by another name, speaking a different language. The house of Israel, known by another name, speaking a different language. But by what name are they known today? By what name are they known today? Whoever they are, wherever they are, it is they and not the Jews who are the birthright possessors. It is they, not the Jews, who after the ending of their punishment in AD 1800 to 1803 must inherit the unbreakable promises to Abraham of national greatness, resources, wealth, and power. National greatness, resources, wealth, and power. It is Manasseh who was to become the world's greatest single nation. Ephraim, a great commonwealth of nations. Who can they be today? Join us again next time here on cogtv.org, Sabbath.tv, WorldWatch.tv, when we'll pick up with Chapter 7 of the U.S. and the U.K. in Prophecy, originally entitled The United States and the British Commonwealth in Prophecy by God's End-Time Apostle Herbert W. Armstrong.
Okay, brethren, so that's it for that reading. Now, allow me, before I switch the camera back, I pulled my coat off while reading that to you, so let me get my coat back on here. Well, all right. Okay. All right, because it's a little bit, believe it or not, the weather has been warm in Alabama, and with the lights on in the studio, it's actually a little bit hot in here today. I was complaining to some of you how cold it can get. My feet can get real cold in this studio when we have ice storms and icy cold weather in the area. But we've got, while my sister is in town for a few days, it's amazing. We've got a little bit of relief from that. And, I mentioned my sister, who, though is not at this moment of the spring harvest, my sister has been very, very helpful to me in this ministry I'm doing, brethren, and to helping me out with some of the things I've needed to be able to take care of here. She's helped me out a number of times, and I'm quite grateful to God for my sister in doing that. So, and again, as Mr. Armstrong said, take every opportunity we can to show love. And again, now, I'm not joining her with the family get-together on Christmas Day when they'll be celebrating Christmas. Look, even though some may make an excuse, and the family itself is trying to say, well, look, hey, just, it's a family get-together. Just join and be with family. You don't have to celebrate Christmas. But I tell you, when they are around you celebrating Christmas, you're totally out of place. You're like a sore thumb, and you're like cold water on what they're doing. And it's just, to me, it's not a good idea to be in a group gathering for a Christmas celebration time. They've got the Christmas tree there, which, is irksome to me, and I'd rather not be around that tree. When you know its history and the paganness of it and how upsetting it is to God, it's just, to me, it's something we should avoid. And so I do. But get together with your family at other times, Also, when they're exchanging gifts and you're not doing that, and if you come, it's kind of awkward if they don't give you a gift. They want to give you a gift, even though you may not give them one back, but that's kind of like, that doesn't fit either, because part of that thing they're taught, they give and they also expect to get back. They give you a gift, they expect to get one, even if it's, some piece of junk they really don't want. And when you leave, they say, look at this sorry thing so-and-so gave me. I've actually heard people make comments like that, brethren. Listen, we have a few more minutes that I could talk to you. Some of you may be wondering, well, Steve, all right, part of your studio wall, you've got a beast from the land over here on the far side of the studio here, and on the other far side, you've got the beast from the ocean, from Revelation 13. Revelation 13 starts out with a beast from the ocean in the first 10 verses, and then when it gets to verse 11, it switches to another beast that it starts mentioning a beast from the land. And then right next to me on this screen, let's see, I got the screen switched from what I usually do. So on this screen right next to me here, on the left of me, from the way it's my right side, but it's from the left of me as you're looking at your screen, is this graphic I put together with both beasts on one graphic. Let me pull that full screen for you. Let's see. That's on screen number 2. So that should be our new trial software setup. That should be this button right here. We'll get the lower third out of the way here. Okay. Now, on this one graphic, on the top of it, well, let me start with the bottom. On the bottom of it, of this graphic, I have the beast from the ocean that's mentioned first in Revelation 13. And then on top of that, I put the beast that's mentioned beginning in verse 11 of Revelation 13, another beast from the land. I put this beast from the land on top. Now I put it on top because it's going to be, this is the current beast we're focusing on. This beast from the ocean, it goes all the way back to King Nebuchadnezzar, who Mr. Armstrong was mentioning in this chapter 6 of United States and British Commonwealth, United Kingdom and Prophecy that we were reading from today. And this beast from the ocean, mentioned in the first part of Revelation 13, is the same in essence. It includes the four beasts that Daniel saw in his dream in Daniel 7. Now, you know, in Daniel 2, the King Nebuchadnezzar himself, had a dream in which the king saw this great statue that's up above my head here, pictured in his dream. He saw this huge statue with a head of gold and breast and arms of silver and belly and thigh of brass, and his 2 legs and feet of iron. It's 2 legs of iron and feet that were both of iron and common clay, miry clay, which, you know, they don't mix. But here the feet are in this unmixable combination of elements, common clay and iron, and the feet and the 10 toes. And God explained to King Nebuchadnezzar through Daniel not only the dream, what the dream he had was, so that proved to King Nebuchadnezzar that, hey, the man speaking to me is inspired of God, because no man of himself could tell me what the dream was I had. I haven't revealed that dream to anyone, and therefore this proves to me, as the king required. He wouldn't tell the magicians who said, well, king, just tell us what the dream was you had, and we'll tell you the meaning of it. Well, the King Nebuchadnezzar was too smart for that. He said, oh no, I got your number, you bunch of guys. I tell you what my dream was, you'll tell me anything. He says, if your inspiration is really, for the meaning of this dream, is really from the gods, or from a god, then you'll also be able to tell me what the dream I had was. And he says, if you don't, all of you are going to be killed. And that included, since Daniel and his friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, were all part of the king's servants who were considered his counselors, you know, and that included the Babylonish magicians. All of them, the king said, all his counselors, if none of them were able to tell him the dream and the meaning of the dream, he was so beset by the dream, so disturbed by it. If none of you can tell me my dream and the meaning of the dream, off with your heads. He was going to have them all killed. And that, again, that included Daniel and his friends. And when that news was announced by one of the king's servants, the man over the servants, when he told them, you know, hey, you're to be taken and put to death if you can't tell the king the dream and his meaning of the dream. Daniel told that servant, well, there's a God in heaven who can reveal that dream, you know, and I can tell the king what that dream is and what it means. Because Daniel had been fasting and praying. He began immediately fasting and praying about it as soon as he heard the men were going to be killed. So the head of the servant of the king, who was head of the counselors to the king, went to the king and said, "Oh, great king, there is a man among the counselors who is able to tell the king the dream and its meaning." And the king said, "Well, bring that man to me at once." So Daniel was brought before the king, and the king said to Daniel, "I understand you can reveal to me my dream and its meaning." And as many of you know, Daniel responded, Daniel 2, "No, your great king, I can't, but there's a God in heaven who reveals to the king the dream and its meaning." And he says, God has revealed that, "Oh, great King Nebuchadnezzar, you saw a statue with a head of gold and, you know, right down to the feet of miry iron and clay." He says, "And here's the meaning of the dream, O great King Nebuchadnezzar, that God is revealing to you. You are this head of gold that we see up there on top of that statue on the two columns above me. And after you, you are the first world-ruling empire, the leader, the head of a world-ruling empire. And after you, there will be a second. And then a third, and then a fourth. And that fourth will be great and terrible, dreadful. And brethren, because of that fourth one, the Roman Empire, which is now in the pit, but it's about to be revived out of the pit. It's now dormant. It's about to be awakened. Any moment the stage is set, that could begin happening. I mean, that could happen next week, or this coming week, or next month. But I'm praying, as I hope many of you are, as Christ instructed us to pray in Matthew 24, where's that, around verse 18, 20, something like that. Let me keep my thumb right here. I want to read you a verse from Daniel 7 that talks about how serious this thing is that's coming. Let me flip over, though, to Matthew 24 and find that exact verse where Christ instructs us to be praying that our escape, which, brethren, we should be looking for, because you don't want to be left around in the Great Tribulation. That's a time of martyrdom. That is an era of martyrdom. And to that era, right in the middle of the only verses that describe the Laodicean era, right in the middle of it, 4 verses before it, 4 verses after it. In Revelation 3, verse 18, Christ, speaking through the Apostle John, tells us that tells those who are left behind when the Laodicean era begins, he says, I counsel you to buy of me gold tried in the fire, the fiery trial of martyrdom. In other words, he's saying your only way out of this, if you were not accounted worthy to escape, which was offered to everybody, but if you didn't do what I said do to be accounted worthy to escape, and he tells you what the criteria is for escaping, in addition to living by every word of God, you got to very specifically follow what Christ said in Luke 21, verse 36, where he said, watch the things he had just been describing in plain language in the earlier part of Luke 21, which was Christ describing the seals from the book of Revelation. And at the point he spoke Revelation 36, he was in time reference between speaking to us who are of the point in between the first 4 seals, which are active now, which are the only seals active, the first 4, the 4 horses, the first seal of white horse of religious deception, Antichrist, false Christ, the second seal depicted in Revelation by a red horse, which Christ described in plain language in the Gospels, one of which I'm reading from you now, Matthew 24, as war and rumors of war and world war and a time of the reuniting, the uniting of a United States of Europe. The third seal depicted in Revelation by a black horse, which Jesus Christ described in plain language as limus, meaning famine, scarcity of food, famine. And the fourth seal depicted in Revelation by a pale horse with a rider on that horse named Death, alongside whom rides the grave, Hades, hell, the grave, which Jesus Christ described in plain language as death, and as death by pestilence, loimus, he said, disease epidemics, the plagues of Egypt, pestilence, and by seismic activity, conditions, commotions in the air, gale force winds of all kind, commotions of the ground, everything from earthquakes to volcanic eruptions to tsunamis, tidal waves, floods, wildfires, anything of a seismic nature, condition, any commotion in the air, on the ground. And he also mentioned a third element that's part of that fourth seal, which he only mentioned in verse 8 of Mark 13, and that being terike, meaning boiling waters, mob, seditions, trouble, general trouble that leads up to the fifth seal, great tribulation, mega trouble, which is the worst time of trouble since the beginning of the world, as Christ says in Matthew 24. But that trouble that begins as part of the fourth seal is not only leads up to the mega trouble. It's not yet the mega trouble, but we're in that time of trouble now. that we see increasing in frequency and in intensity. And Christ said, when that happens and blossoms, then know that the fifth seal is about to open. He said it in these words, know that the kingdom of God is near. And we have a countdown we're understanding from many scriptures, including those from Revelation, that tell us it's 1,260 days, it's 3.5 times, it's 3.5 years from the time the fifth seal opens up until in the seventh seal, the seventh trump is sounded and Christ returns. 3.5 years. Great tribulation. With 1 year of that, including the wrath of God being poured out in the day of the Lord, the year-long day of the Lord. All right, I'm just hitting the highlights of that, just so you refresh it in your mind. But here in Matthew 24, where Christ told us, encouraged us to follow what he said in Luke 21:36, watch and pray always. And do that with a promise he holds out to you, so that you can be accounted worthy to escape all that's going to happen next, beginning with the fifth seal, the sixth seal, the seventh seal, the great tribulation through the year-long day of the Lord, pouring out of God's wrath. And God said, if you get left behind to face that, because you weren't accounted worthy to escape, you also are not accounted worthy to stand before the Son of Man, because your lukewarmness, you thought you had it made. Yeah, you know a lot of the Bible, you kept the holy days, you were keeping the commandments of God, essentially, but you weren't obeying the instruction in Luke 21:36. And therefore God says, I'm going to vomit you out, spit you out of my mouth, and leave you behind. And if you want to make it, if you want to be accounted worthy now to stand before the Son of Man, which that's included at the end of Luke 21:36. It's not just to be accounted worthy to escape, that you got to be watching and praying always. It's to be accounted worthy for the first resurrection. You got to be watching and praying always. You fall short of that, you get left behind. And then you've got to obey the instruction Christ gives in Revelation 3, verse 18, where he says, I counsel you, now that you're left behind. The timing of this is when the Laodicean era of martyrdom begins. It's not here yet. We're not in a time of martyrdom by a beast yet. The beast is not here yet, even though some would claim that the beast has come. Yeah, well, no, it hasn't. That's going to be the worst time of trouble ever. We're not yet in the worst time of trouble. There have been worse times on the earth than right now. And when the Great Tribulation comes, Christ says it's going to be the worst time of trouble ever. I'll read that verse in a moment. But we go back to a few verses before that, where Christ tells us, in verse 20 it is, of Matthew 24, but pray you that your flight, the flight that he makes mention of in Luke 21:36, when he says you can be accounted worthy to escape, and you escape via what he says in Revelation 12, verse 14, via 2 wings of a great eagle. That's a flight. And he says, pray that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. So I wanted to make the point to you, brethren. I don't think it's going to be next week that we'll see the beast and the great tribulation door open up, because, and not just because me only has been doing it, I've been encouraging a lot of you to do it, and I hope you're doing it with me, or else we might see this. But I've been praying according to Christ's instruction there in verse 20 of Matthew 24, and asking God, please, don't wrap this up in the winter. Don't let that fifth seal open up in the winter, as Christ instructed us to pray. I'm praying and asking you that our flight be not in the winter. I hate being outdoors in the cold. When I have to go outside and feed animals in icy cold weather with snow on the ground, I put on my boots, put on a big jacket, and I eat something hot before, or drink some hot tea, put on my cap to hold heat in, from releasing from your head as much as possible. And then I get everything lined up I'm going to need, and I'm all fully dressed for it, and I boom out that door, grab the feed for those animals, hustle over to their feeding stations and give them their food, a little stroke on the head, or on the whap on the back of that horse, or side of that horse, and rub its head, and then boom, I'm back in the house real quick. I get out of that cold, when it's below freezing cold outside. And so, as we've had some winter storms that are pretty tragic. And Christ gives us some wisdom here and instructs us, pray that your flight be not in the winter. I've been doing that, brother, and I encourage you to pray that too. You don't want to have to be escaping in the winter. Being outside is difficult, even though, yeah, we will fly on modern aircraft, some have said. True, you might, but as soon as it gets to where it's going and they open the doors and you've got to get off the plane, you're outdoors. And God's not delivering us to a modern, air-conditioned, heated hotel. We're being flown to a wilderness. That means an outdoor area. So Christ says, pray that your flight be not in the winter. And so that's good and that's wise. We should be doing that. Brother, I got to wrap it up here in a few minutes. So let me hurry up and tell you about that, about a little more quickly about this slide I have. It's important that we understand this. The slide I have up here on this screen. Let me pull it forward on this screen because it's, let's see, which screen? After this screen. Yeah, all right. So I need to pull this one forward. Again, let me pull it forward. All right. Now this, the beast on the bottom, the beast from the ocean, mentioned first of all in Revelation, the first part of Revelation 13, that again is the same as those four beasts, is in essence, it reflects those four beasts that Daniel saw, that he describes in chapter 7 of Daniel. And that was a dream that Daniel himself had, and he was very perplexed at the end of that dream. That's why I wanted to hold my place in Daniel 7, is because Daniel, at the end of the chapter 7, where he's describing the dream that included the four beasts that are depicted by the four heads you see on this beast from the ocean, the one at the bottom. Daniel said, hitherto is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my cogitations, my thoughts, much troubled me, and my countenance, my color, changed in me. But I kept the matter in my heart. He was real troubled by this vision. And in Daniel 12, where he's saying, oh God, he wanted to know what all this meant. And he even asked, he's got this reference in Daniel 12 verse 6, where he said, how long shall it be to the end of all these wonders, all the things that God had showed to Daniel, that he had Daniel write down. And he tells us there that it's a time and times and half a time in verse 7 of Daniel 12. This is one of the references to the 3.5 years that it's going to be from the time that beast comes on the scene until Christ returns. This is one of those references to that. It's going to be a time and times and half a time when he shall have accomplished to scatter the people, the power of the holy people. All these things shall be finished. And then verse 8, and I heard, but I understood not. Then said I, O my Lord, what shall be the end of these things? But God says back to Daniel in verse 9, go your way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. And so even Daniel wasn't able to know everything. But brethren, let me just come back with you for a second, then we'll go back to that big beast. I wanted to, in chapter 7 of Daniel, there's a point that Daniel makes about these two legs, about the Roman Empire, about that fourth beast, which Daniel writes down in verse 19 of Daniel 7. Then I would know the truth of the fourth beast, know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron and his nails of brass, which devoured, brake in pieces, and stamped the residue of the earth. You know, the Roman Empire, world-ruling empire, they demand obedience and they conquer their people. They're fierce and dreadful and vicious. And the 10 horns that were in his head and of the other which came up before him, and whom 3 fell. Let's go back to this for a moment. That's why the 3 little horns on the front end of this beast on the bottom are real tiny, small, and why God distinguishes these 10 horns of this beast from the ocean. He separates the last 7 from the first 3, because these first 3, well, they got plucked up, and of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other that came up before him, and before whom 3 fell. The one that came up that represents the church, the Vatican, the Pope, that plucked up those first 3, even of that horn that had eyes and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows, I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints, and prevailed against them. You know, the saints, brethren, this is a reference to our time today, because the saints are those who are part of the body of Christ, whom God has called since Christ came and since Christ died, and then was resurrected and returned to the throne of God, and on the day of Pentecost sent the Spirit and began to establish saints on the earth, those who have God's Holy Spirit and follow the lead of God. This is a prophecy for our day that's in Daniel 7. But that same horn made war with the saints and did prevail against them. Those who left behind are going to be required to buy of God gold tried in the fiery trial of martyrdom. And God says, that's the only way you're going to make it. You need to buy that so that you can have white raiment. You need to, if you get left behind, you need to go through that. But better, you still got time, if you've got this lukewarm attitude, to turn that around and have a Philadelphian true hot attitude of following God and obeying that instruction in Luke 21:36, to be watching and praying always. And you can do it yourself, but one of the goals that we have, a commission I was given to keep going, what we started with Robert Collins before he died. He was the initial host of a program then called Nightcast. I continued it as Nightcast for 3 or 4 years, and then prayed about it a lot, and under inspiration from God, I changed the name of it to World Watch, something that I wanted to do and God said okay with. And even the fellow that used to write the World Watch thing, I contacted him and said, look, would you have any problem if I used the name of your old article you used to write, Worldwide News, if I named my nightly news program World Watch? And I got no objection to doing that. In fact, I got a lot of counsel and advice as to things to read and how to make sure that we're giving news that's valid, you know, and how to the veracity of it, how to know. And so I follow guidelines given to me and books. I've read all the books that Mr. Hartberg has recommended that I read. And so, brethren, we do that program to help those of you who work all day and come home tired. And I spend a good part of each day when we do the nightly World Watch program. I spend a good part of the day perusing all kind of sources. Now, I only use those we have licenses for, but to find the pertinent ones, I've looked at more than just where we have the license. With the BBC News, I look at sources even for the Palestinians. You know, that ITV source some of you are looking at, that's run in Israel, out of Tel Aviv. That's run by Palestinians. That's not run by the that's not run by the House of Judah. You know, the modern day Israelis who are called Israel, but as we are learning in this book, USMBC, that's not really Israel. That's the House of Judah. The Jews. They're not the house of Israel, but they are men of Israel. They are Israelites. And the world has mistermed and misnamed the house of Judah and the land that's been given to them as Israel. But you know what? That includes areas that were given to all of the house. But, you know, the house left and went up to Samaria. God, once from the time he took them captive, he said, they shall never return back to Samaria. And once he cleans them up, he's going to clean them up. But that'll be after Christ returns. But let's finish this. I'm about to run out of our 2-hour allotted time here. Well, actually, wait, I got a few minutes, but we still need to hurry it up anyway. I want to wrap this up for us. I want to try to do some fellowship, see if I can get into a place where we have a long time 50-year member of the church who's 80 years old now. See if I can see her today. But Daniel, he makes the comment that in verse 23, he says, the fourth beast, which on this statue above me is represented by, the fourth beast represents these two legs of iron, the Roman Empire. The fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse, different, very different from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth. You know, the Roman Empire was a devouring empire of the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. Once it's revived through its seventh head, in Revelation 17 verse 10 says, there are 7 kings, 7 heads of this Roman Empire. It says 5 are fallen. You know, first 3 were plucked up, so we're only going to count the last remaining 7. Let's go back to this beast from the ocean and the other beast for a moment. Put it on the screen full. The bottom one, the beast from the ocean, showing those 10 horns. The first 3 little horns on the edge of the head of the 7th head of this beast from the ocean. If you can see those 3 little horns on the first, a little horn among them came and plucked up those first 3. You know, the Vatican plucked up the first 3, leaving 7 remaining horns on this beast from the ocean. These 7 remaining horns are the same as your 7 kings from the chapter 17 of Revelation verse 10. There are 7 kings. They are these last 7 horns. These last 7 horns on the beast from the ocean are the same as the 7 heads on the beast from the land, which is pictured on the top of this graphic. Now, I've got smoke-colored arrows extending from the last 7 horns of the 10 horns of the 4th head of the beast from the ocean. I'm sorry, of the 7th head. I mean, there's 4 beasts, but one of those beasts has 4 heads, the leopard. You know, there's the lion, which the lion's head is like on this statue above us here. The lion's head on that beast from the ocean is like the head of gold, King Nebuchadnezzar. The bear like the breast and arms of silver, the Persian Empire. The 4 leopard heads are like the belly and thighs of brass that represent the Greek, the Medes and the Greco-Macedonian Empire, the Alexander the Great and his 4 generals. And so those 4 generals depicted by those 4 leopard heads, that's 6 heads. You got the lion, the head of gold, that's 1. You've got the bear, the silver and arms, that's 2. You've got the 4 heads, leopard heads, the 4 generals of Alexander the Great, representing the belly and thighs of brass, that's 6 heads. 3 beasts so far. First beast with 1 head, second beast with 1 head, the third beast with 4 heads. So by the third beast, we got 6 heads. We go to the 4th beast now. It has the 7th head. And on that 7th head of that 4th beast are 10 horns. 3 of those horns are plucked up, leaving 7 remaining horns. Now we're talking about on the beast from the ocean. Then those seven horns from the beast from the ocean, they relate to the 7 heads on the beast from the land, as described in Revelation 13. And so, and the 7, now on the tallest horn on that beast from the ocean, that tallest horn of the last 7 remaining horns, I've got an arrow that points to that big 7th head of the beast from the land. Now the first, we don't know who that's going to be yet, but the first 6 heads on that beast from the land, we know, most Bible students know, that is the same as the kings mentioned in Revelation 17 verse 10, where it says there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen. Now, many Bible students and even Protestant Bible colleges know and understand that those five that are fallen are run from Justinian in 554 A.D. through Napoleon in 1814, when he lost the Battle of 1814, a year before his big comeback effort in 1815. He lost the battle of 1814, which made him lose the kingdom. He lost the United Kingdom of the Roman Empire, and therefore that was the fall of the continuous reign of the Holy Roman Empire from 554 A.D., when Justinian restored the imperial type of rule over the empire. It had been a republic. He restored an imperial rule associated with church, the Vatican, and that ran 1,260 continuous years until Napoleon. It ran from Justinian through Charlemagne, through Otto the Great, through Charles IV, and Napoleon. And I got a picture I sometimes put up, and we go through those, either on World Watch or here on the Sabbath service. But on Sabbath.tv. But then the empire went into the abyss in 1814. For more than 100 years, from 1814 to 1935, the fall of 1935, while God's end-time servant and apostle Herbert Armstrong was alive. One of the proofs of Mr. Herbert Armstrong being a servant of God, through whom God reveals wonderful truths that Daniel would have loved to have understood. God revealed them. Christ revealing them through his human servant, Herbert Armstrong. As Revelation 1 verse 1 says, the revelations are to show who his servants are. Verse 1, chapter 1, Revelation. The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God, referring to God the Father, gave unto him, unto Christ, to show unto his servants, Christ's servants. The servants that God the Father calls and gives to Christ. Human servants, to show them things which must shortly come to pass. And through those servants, God reveals it to the rest of us. But he does this to show, not only unto his servants, but it shows who his servants are. And we're told in Revelation 3, verse 3, to remember by and through whom we learn these wonderful truths, which must shortly come to pass. They're not going to be revealed until the latter days, until they're shortly to become to pass. And they, as God told Daniel, go your way, Daniel, these things are sealed up until the time of the end, when men shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. And that's this time today, brethren, friends. Most of you know this, but we're being reminded and refreshed in that today. And so Daniel was given his left tule to have understood what God was revealing to us through his end-time servant, Herbert W. Armstrong. Many of you say, well, he died and we don't need him anymore. We understand all this stuff now. Yeah, well, just remember, one of the instructions of Christ is found in Revelation 3, verse 3, to remember by and through whom you heard these things. Let me read that to you exactly like it says it. And then we're going to come back quickly to Daniel 7. But Revelation 3, verse 3 tells us, God tells us there, he says, remember, therefore, how you received and heard, and hold fast and repent if you're doing otherwise. If you're making up your own stuff, you're listening to the men that say, we don't need Herbert Armstrong, here's the real truth. We searched it in the Bible. As Mr. Armstrong said, don't believe me, brethren, believe your Bible. So we'll just forget him and read the Bible ourselves. That's not what Mr. Armstrong was saying. In fact, if you listen to the whole context of where he was expounding upon saying, don't believe me, believe your Bible, he goes on to say, and you will find that everything I preach to you is the same thing the Bible preaches, that Christ teaches us and says in the Bible. And you've got to know how to rightly discern it. A little here, a little there, and God gave us the understanding. He put the crossword puzzle together for us through his end-time servant, Herbert Armstrong. And he tells us, remember by and through whom you learn the truth. And don't go off like, man, so many people are doing it. It's so sad to see that. and watering things down and making up their own stuff, and just totally ignoring the end-time apostle who only had authority to set doctrine in the church. And when he did that, brethren, he was doing it by inspiration of God, who, if he ever erred, even though God let us have one error as a test for 40 years, before Mr. Armstrong died, God he cleared up everything. He let us have a 40-year test, like a long test of the kind that Abraham and Isaac had, where we were keeping Pentecost on the first day of the week because of wording in the Bible. And if you go by wording of the Bible, you would have had to come to the same conclusion that Mr. Armstrong came through to, based on Leviticus 23:15. But now for a few who could see that Leviticus 23 verse 16 is adding a clarification that says there's something wrong the way verse 15 is worded in modern translations. But God kept that from Mr. Armstrong. God caused Mr. Armstrong to act on verse 15 and not reveal to him until 40 years later as a test, with God opening up Mr. Armstrong's mind to see, hey, we need to change this, and now you've taught this in the church this way for so many years. Will you continue to keep your tradition now? Which there was some bragging about the tradition of us being Monday Pentecost keepers, how we're unique. Yeah, Mr. Armstrong had to eat a lot of crow, but he was willing to do it. He said, if God proves us wrong, we won't continue in the wrong. We'll admit it, and we'll change. And Mr. Armstrong did it. I was there when he announced it the first time in an hour forum in the assembly for the students at the college. And all the employees were invited in as he revealed how we misunderstood that. So God corrected his servant. And when Mr. Armstrong died, God left us good doctrine. And he hasn't brought along any new apostles, so there's no man on earth today who can change the doctrine that God gave us through Mr. Herbert Armstrong. And there's no need to change it, because everything that God revealed of truth to us through his end-time apostle Herbert Armstrong, it squares squarely with a rightly discerned reading of the Bible. It squares. Even the truth God gave us, the doctrine God gave us, the teaching, the instruction with authority behind it that God gave us about when the Laodicean era will officially begin. All the attitude of Laodicea was even here while Mr. Armstrong was alive. And yeah, it's a big rampant attitude today. One that, brethren, if you've got it, you better try your best to get rid of it, or you're going to be left behind for when God instructed us through his end-time apostle the Laodicean era would begin formally as an era after the Great Tribulation begins, after Philadelphia is taken to a place of protection and safety, after it's flown on the wings of two eagles to the wilderness, where for a time and times and half a time, 1,260 days, 3.5 times, 3.5 years, she, the church, the true church, is protected. And the only place on the earth that the beast has no dominion over. Little area described in Daniel 11, verse 41, 42. Otherwise, the beast has got dominion over the whole world, and the beast is requiring those in his dominion to take the mark of the beast. Now, some misunderstand what the mark of the beast, and I saw one sister, lovely young lady, the other day saying, "Oh, I don't believe in the mark of the beast." Probably doesn't understand what the mark of the beast is. Probably doesn't understand there is a great tribulation coming. There is a great tribulation coming, and the mark of the beast, as God has explained it through his end-time apostle, and it squares with Scripture, is bowing down to the image of the beast or working on the Sabbath, both of which the beast will require. He will require people to bow down before his image, and that's the image is the church part of that church-state governed beastly power. They'll require people to bow down before the image of the beast, and they'll require people which also means they'll require you to worship on Sunday, and they will require you to work on the Sabbath. And if you refuse either thing, if you refuse to bow down before the image, or if you refuse to work on the Sabbath, they will kill you. They'll announce you as anathema, the church part of it will, and the government part of it will put you to death on behalf of the church. Because the woman, the church, the false church, the woman that rides this beast, let's see, even on that one, even on this slide here, the one on the top, you can see on the back of that seventh head, there's a woman in a saddle with the reins that control where that beast goes and when it moves and which direction it goes. She's back there riding that beast. She will announce those who refuse to bow down before its image or refuse to work on the Sabbath. She'll announce them as anathema. That beast with those great iron teeth will eat that person up, will kill them. And so, that's an enabler. Those who are not accounted worthy to escape, whom God had considered lukewarm, hey, they're counseled. Buy of me gold tried in the fiery trial of martyrdom. Well, the beast is going to help you out. He's going to say, you don't bow down before the image, or you refuse to work on the Sabbath, we'll kill you. So there you go. There's your opportunity. Instead of taking the mark, which enables you to buy food in the world during the time of the beast, during the Great Tribulation, you buy of God with spiritual gold. You buy of him this martyrdom. You buy of him gold, spiritual gold, tried in the fiery trial of martyrdom. The beast will provide you that opportunity. All you got to do is refuse to work on the Sabbath. Boom, you've bought that gold in the fiery trial of martyrdom, because they'll kill you. They'll make you a martyr. So there you go. The beast is going to help you. If you weren't accounted worthy to escape the beast, then you'll have to be killed by the beast to make it into God's kingdom. So it all works. God's got it all so that it all works. But that seventh head, I wanted to point this out to you. Those last 7 horns on the beast from the ocean, those last 7 horns are the same as the 7 heads of this beast from the land. And that 7th head of the beast from the land has upon it 10 horns. Those are 10 different horns. The 10 horns on the beast from the ocean are 10 consecutive leaders. They're not, by consecutive I mean one after the other. They're not concurrent. As opposed to the 10 horns that represent 10 leaders, 5 from the east, 5 from the west, that are on the head of this 7th head of the beast from the land. These are 10 concurrent, not consecutive, but concurrent kings, different from the leaders represented by the horns on the beast from the ocean, which are concurrent. Not concurrent, I meant to say consecutive. The word is similar, but consecutive means, first of all, there was Justinian in 554. Then later there was Charlemagne. Then later, after he dies, there was Otto the Great. And after him was Charles IV. And then after him was Napoleon. And then after him, the 6th, the one that was only between 1935 and 1945, was Mussolini. So you've got that verse in Revelation 17, verse 10 is saying there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen. The 5 fallen being Justinian through Napoleon. And then it says, and one is. There are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, one is. The one is was the one that came and announced him, that got a concordant from the Vatican and invaded Ethiopia and announced himself as the new Julius Caesar, and that he had restored the Holy Roman Empire. And God caused his end-time servant at the time, Herbert Armstrong, in 1935, when Mr. Armstrong would have been 35 plus 8, he would have been 43 years old, if I did that arithmetic math correctly. 35 plus 8, 43. When Mr. Armstrong was 43 years old, he saw it, was able to announce it coast to coast, and in his publications mailed to anybody around the world who requested them at the time, and announced on his radio program that the 6th king, the one that was now is. And that verse, Revelation 17:10, that part of the verse that says, and one is, was then present tense. When a the Apostle John wrote it in 90 A.D. on the Isle of Patmos, it was yet into the future. It was a future perfect tense, a future time, a future perfect that would become. It was written as if it were present tense, but for a time that was ahead of us, where he said there, and one is. It wasn't is at the time John wrote it. That was written ahead for a time when God's end-time apostle would be alive and preaching on the radio. And one is between 1935 and 1945, the fall of 1935 to the spring of 1945. So the Holy Roman Empire was revived for 9.5 years, same length of time that Napoleon reigned, from the fall of 1804 to the spring of 1814, when he lost the Battle of 1814. Napoleon had a 9.5-year reign. Mussolini had a 9.5-year reign. And, excuse me, brethren, and so the one is between 1935 and 1945, and so that revived the Holy Roman Empire. That was your sixth king, and now the Holy Roman Empire is back in the abyss. It's back in the pit. It's now back dormant. It's been dormant between 1945, the spring of 1945. In fact, we know the actual day, April 28, 1945, when Napoleon was shot in the belly, hung upside down from the canopy of an Esso gasoline station. That Roman government, that beast, has been in the pit again since 1945 to this present time. And the rest of verse 10 of Revelation 17 says, after it says there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, one is. The one is now fallen with the other 5, so 6 are fallen. And one and another is yet to come, it says. So there's one yet to come. How does it word that exactly? Let me give you the exact wording, brethren. Revelation 17, verse 10, about the one that we're watching for to come, that's not here yet. It says it like this, Revelation 17, verse 10. There are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, and one is, and the other is not yet. The other's there's 7 kings. If 5 are fallen and one is, he's now fallen too. That's 6. There's 7 kings. That only leaves one, and so the other, that one left to come, that 7th, is not yet come. And when he comes, he must continue a short space. That short space being a time and times and a half a time, 1,260 days, 3.5 years. During the 3.5-year Laodicean era. And during the 3.5 years when the Philadelphia eras, those who were hot will be in a place of protection and safety. And God tells those of Laodicea, I counsel you, buy of me gold tried in this fiery trial of martyrdom. During this era of martyrdom, the beast is going to kill you when you refuse to work on the Sabbath, when you refuse to bow down before his image. Let him do it, because as Christ says through John in verse 18, Revelation 3, I counsel you to buy of me gold tried in the fire. There you are. There's how you buy that gold. You just refuse to work on the Sabbath, refuse to bow down before the image of the beast. Those, by the way, sweetheart, are the little gal who said, I don't know about this mark of the beast. I don't know what it is. It's probably nothing. No, it's something. It's a big deal, and it only is it's going to occur once that beast comes. And once that beast comes, as Christ puts it, that beast, we're talking about that beast from the land, the 7th head of that beast from the land, when he comes, when that beast comes, let me pop that back up here for a moment. When that beast on the top of this chart comes, when the 7th head of that beast comes, there'll be 10 kings who voted to give him the power, and the Pope, that woman who represents the Vatican and its representative, the Pope, that the Bible calls the false prophet, it will crown that 7th head in a coronation ceremony that will most likely be held where they've been held before, in Frankfurt, Germany, up on the 2nd floor of the Romer building, which houses the Kaiser's Hall, the Emperor's Hall, which was bombed at the end of World War II, but thanks to the good old American taxpayer, that's in the news this week about taxpayers, But in the Marshall Plan that was the Marshall Fund that was set up after World War II used money from taxpayers from America to help rebuild Germany, and it included rebuilding the Romer's building and to the exact specifications architecturally of the previous Kaiser's Hall, the Emperor's Hall. It was rebuilt. Now that was the place where the kings and emperors of the Holy Roman Empire were coronated, where they were crowned. And when I say coronated, where their coronation ceremonies were held, and they were crowned there. And we helped rebuild that place, from which, when I say we Americans, the House of Manasseh, or the tribe of Manasseh, helped rebuild, which tribe of Ephraim with Manasseh helped bomb it out, but we helped rebuild the Kaiser's Hall, the Emperor's Hall, in Frankfurt, Germany, the place historically where the emperors of the Holy Roman Empire have been crowned, and other kings too that relate to that Roman Empire, Holy Roman Empire. We helped rebuild that place where the seventh and final king is most likely, history, you learn lessons from history. History often repeats itself. Historically, they're going to want to do it where they've done that before. It's got all that ring to it. It's got all that pageantry. It's got all that authority to the Kaiser's Hall, the Emperor's Hall, where they crown the kings of the Holy Roman Empire. That crown, by the way, is on display right now, being heavily guarded and protected in the royal treasury in Vienna. That crown will be flown from Vienna, or however they'll get it over. They could take it by train or by armored tank. From Vienna, they could take it to, I've taken a train from France through Germany to Vienna. It wouldn't be that big of a train ride from the time I took the train when the German police boarded, and just to check for the wrong people or whatever on the train, man, they got on like a military. It was scary. The uniforms, polished uniforms they were wearing, it reminded me like, hey, wait a minute, I thought you people were a captured people under unconditional surrender. Here you've got police that look like military getting on board this plane. Getting on board this train that I was riding on, that all of a sudden, through the other countries, France didn't do that. Vienna didn't do that. But boy, while you were in Germany, on the stops there, this military gets on and goes through there. Scary. And I'm thinking, boy, Germany, this reminds me too much of Nazi time, And why is this allowed, or, done in this very obnoxious appearing manner? To me, it was obnoxious. Anyway, that train from Vienna to Frankfurt, Germany, it'd be no big deal to transport that crown with very heavily guarded military. Nobody's going to steal that throne, that crown of the Holy Roman Empire. Even now, it's behind thick glass, and there are plenty of guards in that building, in that royal treasury. That crown's not going anywhere until it's time to be placed upon the head of the seventh king of Revelation 17:10. There are 7 kings. One is yet to come. Well, let's see. I lost my place. How did that exact wording go? Let me get that before we finish up. This is important. We keep this on mind, brethren. It's important as to how you conduct your daily lives and your prayer, which should be plentiful in your daily activities at this time. And we should be praying as Christ prayed in the verse I read you, verse 20 of Matthew 24, that our escape be not in the winter. Otherwise, it could be in the next week or two or next month. Things are that ready to go, more than ever. Mr. Armstrong would be jumping up and down and pounding on the lectern and saying, "Brethren, wake up!" Because what he saw while he was alive, they hadn't even started circulating the euro yet, the single currency. And he did tell us there are 4 unions that are needed. I'll come back to those 4 unions in a moment. Let me look at that verse again. Verse 10, Revelation 17. The others not yet come. So that 7th king is not yet come. When he comes, he shall continue a short space. There are 4 unions to that beast coming into power, as Mr. Armstrong expounded it to us and explained it to us. One is an economic union, and two is a political union. Now they've got both of that going. They started the economic union as a trade union initially, and just really soft pedaled it as an ECC or EEC, the European Economic Community, which eventually Britain decided, hey, well, for trade, well, this would be good for us to be in this economic community. Yeah, we're part of Europe. But then it grew into a political union with the Treaty of Rome, other treaties on the way to that. I'm just summarizing it because I just got a minute to, I got to get us off here. I'm just starting into overtime, so let me finish this real quick and then we'll go. So two was a political union. They've got that together, and even with Brexit, Brexit's causing that political union to tighten up even stronger. So you got an economic union, and they've started circulating the euro back in 1999, 2000. They began circulating the euro, coining the money, and a single currency, a currency that works against the American Yankee dollar, which has had the value it's had, even with our tremendous debt. We've been able to soft pedal and work around that debt and stay alive and be the money of the world, because the Yankee dollar has continued to be the reserve currency and the standard of value for the world against all the other monies are weighed against. And there's been God has continued a confidence in the United States, even though the breaking of the power of that confidence is happening because of, as God says in Leviticus 23, where he says that, and in the parallel chapter, Leviticus 23, Leviticus 26 and Deuteronomy 28, the parallel chapter. Blessing and cursing chapters. We obey God, it's blessings. We disobey God, it's cursings. Part of the cursings are we disobey, we lose the pride of our power. That's happening. Part of the blessings is you'll be the lender, not the borrower. Part of the cursing for disobeying God is you'll be the borrower, not the lender. In the news this week with the tax change is the fact, and with the budget that has to be extended because end of this year the money gets cut off, except for this little extension they made to February 19, I think it was. January 19, February 19, the 19th of one of those early months in the year. They have where they come up, they got to finalize the budget or the government shuts down economically. We've been able to go on financially, brethren, because the American Yankee dollar has been the world currency. It's been the reserve currency that the world and the standard of value against money is exchanged and traded, and that values of things, including different monies of the world, are set in relation to the American dollar. That's changing. Other reserve, even the euro is being saved up by China and Japan. You know, it keeps growing against the reserves of the American dollar. And once that passes the American dollar reserves, eventually they'll drop and they'll try to get rid of the American dollar as the reserve currency. When that happens, our Yankee dollar, with all that debt we have, its value could drop overnight. We could suddenly see ourselves, and Mr. Armstrong warned us to prepare to reduce your standard of living. That could happen, boom, overnight. If you've got your situation where when the money gets devalued and you don't have it to buy food, you know, because you're paying for too much other stuff and what have you, you find yourself in trouble. We were told to prepare to reduce our standard of living. But that beast is coming. Brenda, I got to wrap up. I just got to say so long. We'll pick up here again next time I speak to you. Thank you for joining me on this Sabbath. Again, it's the 5th day of the 10th month, so we've got a little more than 3 months and about a week until the next feast day. Passover is not a holy day, it's a feast day, but it's the most solemn feast day of the entire year. And on the evening, after sunset, soon after sunset, we'll have the Passover foot washing ceremony, commemorative ceremony. And so we got a little more than 3 months for that. And today is 23rd of December, 2 days before one of the biggest pagan holy holidays that this world celebrates and attempts to call the birthday of Christ, which it is not. Brethren, I got to go. Wish you a happy Sabbath. Thanks for joining me. Until next time, and hopefully we'll be on with things fixed where I can do the shots with the news, get back to keeping our nose right on top of that. Hopefully I can be back on again tomorrow night with World Watch, Sunday through Thursday night. And then otherwise, we missed Bible study last night because I just couldn't get things on. And I did a couple of things and got it on this morning. But until next time, here on Sabbath.tv next Friday night, Bible study, and otherwise on WorldWatch.tv, cogtv.org's WorldWatch TV, will plan, God willing, to be back on with the day's current news related to the Bible and prophecy tomorrow night, Sunday night, here on cogtv.org, WorldWatch.tv for that tomorrow night. Until next time, brethren, friends, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreath wishing you Shabbat Shalom, wonderful, happy Sabbath. Hope you have a little opportunity for fellowship with brethren. And till next time, ta-ta, toodaloo, happy Sabbath, Shabbat Shalom.